Hey everyone, Eric Chabot here. I'm the director of a couple apologetic ministries, one at The Ohio State University and Columbus State Community College in Columbus, Ohio. And I am the CJF Ministries Midwest representative here. Also, I blog at thinkapologetics.com. Some of you read our blogs, and of course, you've seen some of our YouTube clips. We record some of the stuff we do on the campuses and other teachings. So in this clip, I'm going over another series on some of my favorite books on certain topics. I know many of you are grounded at home and you just have all kinds of time to read. And so in this clip, I'm going to talk about my favorite books, or some of my favorite books on epistemology. You may say, well, what the heck is that? Well, epistemology is the study of knowledge. It's how you know things. It involves talking about tests for truth and how do we arrive at knowledge. Now, you may say, well, who cares about such a thing? I mean, why would we care about epistemology? It's a branch of philosophy that only those really geeky philosophers get into. Well, let me say that epistemology impacts everything you do, because on a daily basis, you're constantly asking yourself, how do I know what I know? Let me give you a perfect example right now. So we have a crisis in our country with the virus, and you're watching the media. You're hearing all these stories. You're reading the articles, watching the news, hearing sometimes conflicting accounts of what's going on, and you're saying to yourself, well, how do I trust the media to give me the knowledge that I need to make an informed decision about what is going on? And that's why a book like this, I got it years ago. It's called What to Believe Now, Applying Epistemology to Contemporary Issues. And this book talks about the media, talks about how issues with the media impact how we can know what we know as far as current news. And there's an ongoing crisis, of course, whether the media is giving us accurate information so we can say we know what's going on. So you apply epistemology in just about everything you do. You get trained on a job, and the employer gives you accurate training or the proper training so you have knowledge, skilled knowledge on how to perform a certain skill. You go to college to get a degree, and now you know something about a specific topic, so you can take that degree and apply it into the workforce. On a daily basis, you talk about how you know things. If someone says to you, well, how do you know that John is over playing basketball at the sports complex? You say, well, I saw him there and I talked to him. See, you have knowledge by testimony, direct testimony. You were there, you talked to John, you interacted with him. So there's a claim of knowledge that you have. So we apply knowledge, or we apply epistemology in just about everything we do. Now, when it comes to God's existence and who Jesus is, of course, this plays a huge role in our faith, because, when we make the claim that we know God exists, or we know Jesus is the Son of God, he rose from the dead, we're making an epistemological claim. We're saying that we have knowledge that there is a God, or we have knowledge that Jesus rose from the dead. And now, there are, of course, many, many debates on different kinds of methods of epistemology and how we know what we know. But the point is that when someone comes to you and they say, I just don't think I can know there's a God, or I don't know if God exists, or I don't think we can know Jesus rose from the dead, they're talking about epistemology. They're saying that I really don't think we can have knowledge about that. I just don't know. I don't think we can know. Now, you may say to yourself, well, that's why we have faith. Well, faith is it's not just like when we have faith, we don't have any knowledge involved with faith. Like we don't know anything. That's incorrect. We do have faith, and we trust in what we know to be true. We trust in what we know or have good reasons to be true. So if I say that I think that God exists, or I think that Jesus rose from the dead, or I have faith that God exists, or I have faith that Jesus rose from the dead, I think I have good reasons to say that Jesus rose from the dead, or I have good reasons to say that I know God exists. Now, when you get into epistemology, of course, we get into these issues. Now, so let me talk about a few of the books that I've read over the years that really helps with this. The first book is How We Know What We Know. This is the book, An Introduction to Epistemology by James Dew and Mark Foreman. And this came out about, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. I read it. But this is a good introduction to epistemology. It says on the back, what does it mean to know something? Can we have confidence in our knowledge? So that's a good starting point right there. How Do We Know by James Dew and Mark Foreman. Another book that goes a long ways back is by J. Wood. It's called Epistemology Becoming Intellectually Virtuous. and he talks about all the different kinds of the different kinds of ways we know things, and of course the different kinds of epistemology we have and how it relates to our faith in God. So this is in the series on Christian philosophy. Stephen Evans was the editor, but this is a good intro as well. Another book, The Bible and Epistemology. You may say to yourself, well, what's the relationship between the Bible and epistemology? Well, obviously, if you've read the Bible, you know that there's a gap between us and God, and we do not have knowledge of God unless he reveals himself to us. God has to take the initiative to reveal knowledge to us of who he is. And we, of course, believe he has done this through the world of nature. We believe that you can look in the natural world and make inferences, cause and effect relationships. You can ask what the best explanation is for certain effects in reality. And, of course, we believe that he has taken the initiative to give us knowledge of himself in history. That means that he's spoken through the nation of Israel. He has spoken through certain prophets. And, of course, the ultimate prophet and the ultimate revelation of God is Jesus himself. And Jesus gives us knowledge of God. And then we have the Bible that comes along. And the Bible is God's revelation to humanity, so we can have knowledge of God by reading the Scriptures. And, of course, the Holy Spirit gives us knowledge of God and helps us to understand the Scriptures. So we're making an historical claim, and we believe that we can know things through history, that God has revealed himself through history and, of course, the world of nature. Another book that is a little deeper on this topic is a book called How We Can Know. This is one of the first books I ever read on Epistemology by Louis Pajman, Introduction to the Theory of Knowledge. He wrote this a long time ago, but I read this, 10 or 11, 12 years ago. But this is a good book on an intro to the theory of knowledge. And so, of course, in philosophy, they debate this stuff all the time. But if you really want to get an intro in just a philosophical sense, this is a really good book, What We Can Know. Another book that came out that I read over the last 4 or 5 years is Theologies, Epistemological Dilemma. And this is a book about the relationship between Karl Barth and Alvin Plantinga. Alvin Plantinga is one of the most well-known philosophers in the last 50 years, and he's written a lot about epistemology, and Karl Barth was a theologian. They debate in this book over how we have knowledge about God and what is the best approach. And so this is kind of like an interaction between those two thinkers, and the author interacts with them and talks about the strengths and weaknesses of each one. So if you want to look about how the relationship between theology and epistemology works out, this would be a good book to read as well. Another book that is really helpful is J.P. Moreland's Kingdom Triangle. Now, J.P. Moreland is a well-known Christian philosopher. He's a well-known Christian apologist, but he wrote this book because he was concerned that Christians are not understanding that they have a knowledge tradition. Basically, they only assume they have a faith tradition. So when we tell people about our beliefs, we just talk about faith, but we don't really talk about knowledge. And so it comes across as if science is the only thing that gives us true knowledge, and then faith is just something where we really don't know anything. We don't have any knowledge. So he talks about there needs to be a correction made in that area. He wrote this a ways back, back in like 2007 or so. We still have the same problems today. He was so right when he wrote it. When I talk to Christians about why they believe what they believe, they say they have faith, but I don't think they know that they have knowledge. So that's something that he talks about in this book, and so you may want to get that. Another book that is a really deep read by Tim McGrew. You can't see, there's no front page here or front cover here. You can see it, but as far as words on here, it says The Foundations of Knowledge. But Dr. Tim McGrew is a philosopher at Western Michigan University. You can read his books on epistemology. I think this was part of his dissertation. This is a really deep read, but it's called The Foundation of Knowledge, and he is a brilliant philosopher. And then finally, an older book called Epistemology, the Justification of Belief. And we're talking about epistemology, we're talking about having justification. Why are you justified in believing what you believe? For example, if I say, well, I'm justified in believing the CNN story on the virus. I'm justified in believing the Fox News story on the virus. I'm justified in believing that Jesus rose from the dead. That's what that means there. We're talking about justification. So this is a good little short read. So when it comes to the resurrection, and of course the central claim of our faith, Dr. Mike Licona wrote this book, his dissertation on the resurrection of Jesus, and he went over a lot of issues here on the resurrection of Jesus and how we can have historical knowledge, because a lot of people are agnostic. Maybe we can't really know anything in the past. How do we know what we know about Jesus rising from the dead? What kind of tests do we use, or what kind of methodology do we use? And so that's what he talks about in that book. So just remember, when you're talking to someone about God's existence or who Jesus is, you're really talking about an issue of, there's an issue of epistemology that comes into the discussion, because many people are skeptical because they don't have a worked out epistemology, or many people just punt out of the faith because they're agnostic. Sometimes they don't know much about epistemology. Now, there's some people that do. I'm not saying they don't. But the point is that it has to do with a lot of issues that surround the field of epistemology. So I can tell you really benefit from diving into issues of epistemology. It will help your faith. It will help you work things out, and knowing the types of certainty you can have, and what kind of, what are the tests for truth. And just remember that you don't have to learn everything, but some of those books are good starting points. But it'll help you in the long run when you're running into a lot of skepticism, a lot of agnosticism, when you basically have an understanding of how to ground knowledge claims and what kinds of certainty you can have. So I hope this helped you in your faith, and I hope you can get a few of these books, and hope you're doing well in this season. And we're obviously praying for renewal during this time, and that you will be able to get through this. Have a good day.